Christmas isn't for charity, Mom. That's what my son said before he slammed the door in my face. I can still hear the sound sharp final, like something inside me breaking clean in two. His wife, Amber, stood behind him, her perfect red lips curved in a polite little smile. The kind people wear when they've already won. The snow was falling hard that night. The kind that sticks to your coat and reminds you how cold the world can be when you're not welcome anywhere. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I just stood there for a moment, staring at the door that used to open with laughter, hugs, and Sunday dinners. Then I turned around and walked down the path I helped pay for, holding a bag full of gifts that nobody wanted. I drove home in silence. The streets were glowing with Christmas lights. Kids were running with sleds. Couples were holding hands. And me? I was just a woman driving alone through the snow, realizing she'd spent her whole life giving to people who'd already moved on. When I got home, I didn't even take off my coat. I went straight to the kitchen, poured myself a cup of coffee, and sat in front of my laptop. I opened my bank account, the one that had been bleeding for years, and started scrolling through the automatic payments. Mortgage, car insurance, family plan, monthly transfers to Jordan's account. I clicked cancel, then another, and another, until all the lifelines holding up their perfect little world disappeared with one word: cancel. It took 5 minutes. 5 minutes to undo 5 years of being their safety net, and as strange as it sounds, I didn't feel guilty. I didn't even feel angry. I just felt light, like I'd been carrying 100 pounds of silence on my back, and finally set it down. But that kind of strength doesn't come overnight. It grows slowly, painfully, from years of being used, ignored, and taken for granted. Because the truth is, this story didn't start on Christmas Eve. It started 5 years earlier, when Jordan first came to me with that charming smile, the same one he used to get out of trouble as a boy. He and Amber had just gotten married. They came to my little apartment, all dressed up and glowing. I thought they were there to visit, to share a meal, maybe bring good news. But they brought papers instead. Mom, he said, the bank needs a co-signer. Just your signature, nothing else. Amber smiled, her nails perfectly painted. It's just so the kids can grow up in a real home, Maria. A house with a yard. Don't you want to be part of their beginning? Their beginning. That's what she called it. I signed without reading a single line. Because that's what mothers do. We trust. And 5 years later, that trust turned into a weapon. One thrown straight at my heart. That Christmas night, as I stared out my window watching the snow fall over Denver, I whispered to myself, I'm done. Not because I stopped loving them, but because I finally started loving myself. I didn't know it yet, but by morning, Jordan's perfect life would start to fall apart, one unpaid bill at a time. The first call came 2 days later. I was folding laundry when my phone buzzed on the counter. Jordan. I stared at his name lighting up my screen, the same name that used to make my heart leap. Now just a reminder of every dollar and tear I'd spent trying to keep him comfortable. I didn't answer. It rang again, and again. Then the messages started. Mom, something's wrong with the bank. Mom, call me. It's urgent. Why did you stop the payments? Are you okay? Oh, I was more than okay. For the first time in years, I was fine. Truly fine. I poured myself a cup of coffee, sat by the window, and let the phone vibrate until it went quiet. It felt strange, powerful, even to not rush, to not fix, to not rescue. For decades, I jumped every time someone else's life started burning. I was always the one holding the hose. But now, I was watching from a distance. That night, there were more missed calls. By morning, there were 23. The next day, a knock on my door. Loud, fast, desperate. I looked through the peephole. Jordan. His hair was messy, eyes bloodshot, the proud man from Christmas now looking like a storm that had lost its direction. Mom, open up, he said. Please, I need your help. His voice cracked, the same voice that once told me Christmas wasn't for charity. I didn't open the door. I just stood there, my hand resting against the cold wood, listening. The mortgage payment bounced, he said. The bank called. They're threatening foreclosure. I don't know what happened, Mom. You always handled that stuff. You always handled that stuff. He said it like it was still my job, like I was some invisible assistant in his story. Not a human being with limits. I need $8,000 right now, he continued, panic rising. If I don't pay by Friday, we'll lose the house. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. $8,000. I used to make half that cleaning other people's homes until my knees ached and my hands cracked. And even then, I'd give it away because that's what mothers do. We give, even when it hurts. But this time, I stayed silent. Mom, please, he begged, voice trembling. Amber furious. She says it's my fault, that I can't provide. Please, don't do this to us. to us. As if I was the one tearing their life apart. As if he hadn't done it himself one favor, one lie, one manipulation at a time. When he realized I wasn't going to open, he banged on the door once, twice, 3 times. Then his voice turned sharp. This isn't right, Mom. You can't just abandon your family. But that was the thing, I hadn't abandoned anyone. I just stopped being their crutch. Eventually, the knocking stopped. I heard his footsteps fade down the hallway, and in the quiet that followed, something inside me bloomed. It wasn't joy. It wasn't pride. It was peace. Cold, steady, freeing peace. I made myself a simple dinner that night: soup, bread, tea. For once, it tasted good. Maybe because it was made for me. The next morning, the phone started again. Messages from Amber this time. Her words dripping with fake concern and polished guilt. Maria, we're all family. Can't we act like adults? Jordan's just stressed. He didn't mean what he said. Think about the kids, Maria. They love their grandma. But I'd learned something new about love. Real love doesn't use guilt as a weapon. So I turned off my phone, wrapped myself in a blanket, and looked out at the sunrise spilling over the snow. For the first time, I didn't feel small. I felt free. I thought ignoring their calls would be the hardest part, but what came next would test me in ways I never imagined. A week passed before I saw him again. By then, the calls had slowed. The messages had turned from desperate to angry, from pleading to blaming. And just when I thought maybe he'd given up, I heard a commotion outside my apartment. When I peeked through the curtains, I saw Jordan standing on the sidewalk. His car, the shiny black SUV he'd once bragged about, was parked crookedly in front of the building. He was pacing, running his hands through his hair, yelling into his phone. And then I saw her, Amber. She was standing a few feet away, arms crossed, shouting back. The kind of shouting that made the whole street stop and listen. You said your mother would help us, she snapped. I told you. She won't even answer. You're useless, Jordan. You let everything fall apart. They didn't see me watching from my second-floor window. Maybe it was better that way. For years, I'd been their invisible help. Now, I was their invisible witness. Amber threw her hands in the air. The bank gave us until Friday. You hear me? Friday. And we don't have a single dollar. You better fix this, or we're done. She stormed off, heels crunching in the snow, leaving Jordan alone. For a long time, he just stood there, staring at the ground like he was finally realizing something. That I was no longer the safety net beneath his fall. That night, I made myself a small meal: roasted chicken, a side of vegetables. Simple, humble, mine. I ate while watching the snow drift down under the streetlights, and I realized something I never thought I'd feel again. Peace. Not the kind that comes from everything being perfect, but the kind that comes from finally letting things be imperfect without rushing to fix them. The next morning, an email arrived. Amber. Her tone was different, now soft, rehearsed, sugar-coated with desperation. Dear Maria, I know things haven't been perfect between us. We all say things we don't mean when we're under stress. The children miss you so much. They keep asking why Grandma doesn't visit anymore. We're family, Maria. We should forgive. We should help each other. Please call me. Love, Amber. I read it 3 times. Every line was a performance. Every word carefully chosen to sound warm, but the cold still seeped through. They didn't want reconciliation. They wanted rescue. I didn't reply. Friday came. I spent the morning at the market, bought fresh bread, vegetables, and a small bouquet of daisies for the table. When I came home, my phone was full of missed calls from unknown numbers. I didn't answer. I didn't have to. I knew what they meant. By evening, there was another knock at my door. This one wasn't angry, it was hollow. I looked through the peephole. Jordan again. He looked different this time. Defeated. His jacket hung loose, his face pale, eyes rimmed with sleeplessness. Mom, he said quietly. Please, just talk to me. I opened the door halfway, not out of weakness, but out of curiosity. He took a breath. The banks were closing. They're taking the house. Amber threatening to leave. I don't know what to do. For a moment, he looked like the little boy I used to rock to sleep after his nightmares, scared, lost, begging for comfort. And for one fleeting second, my heart almost softened. Then I remembered that night on his doorstep. The word charity, the door that closed in my face. I met his eyes. Jordan, I said gently, you built your life on something that wasn't yours to take. Now it's time you learn to stand on your own. He blinked, stunned. You don't mean that. I do. He opened his mouth to argue, but I shut the door before he could speak. And for the first time in his life, I didn't look back. But I should have known when people lose the comfort they once had, desperation turns into something darker. And Jordan was just getting started. I thought that after the foreclosure notice, things would go quiet. But silence has a way of fooling you. It's never real peace, not when people like Jordan are still holding out hope that you'll cave. For 2 whole days, the phone didn't ring. No knocks. No messages. I started to believe maybe, just maybe, he'd accepted it. Then, on the 3rd night, someone started pounding on my door. It was after 10, the hour when good news never comes. The kind of knocking that shakes the walls, the kind that carries panic in every beat. I froze. Then I looked through the peephole. Jordan again. He looked worse than before, pale, hollow, his jacket unzipped, hair damp from the cold. But this time, there was no anger in his voice, just fear. "Mom," he called out, breathless. "Please open up, please." I didn't move. I stood there, heart thudding. He hit the door once, then again. "They took the car," he said, voice cracking. "Amber gone. She took the kids to her mother's. I have nowhere to go. Nowhere to go." Those words cut deep. Not because I pitied him, but because I'd been there. I'd built my whole life with nowhere to go, nowhere to fall back to but myself. And now, for the first time, he was standing in that same cold truth. "Mom, I'm sorry," he said. His voice broke on the word sorry. "I messed up. I know I did. I need help to get back on my feet. Just this once. Please, just this once." The lie I'd heard 100 times in 100 different forms. I took a deep breath, pressed my hand against the door, and spoke quietly, so quietly that I barely heard myself say it. No, for a second. Everything went silent. Then I heard his breath catch. "What do you mean, no?" "I mean no, Jordan. No more money. No more saving. You'll have to figure this out on your own." He started to laugh, not because it was funny, but because it was the sound of disbelief turning into anger. "You can't do this, Mom. You're my mother." "Yes," I said. "And being your mother doesn't mean I have to destroy myself for you." He hit the door again. Hard. "You're selfish," he shouted. "You'll regret this, maybe." But I didn't open it. Eventually, his voice faded down the hallway, replaced by silence, the heavy kind that lingers after a storm. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, waiting for the guilt to come. It didn't. Instead, there was something else, relief. The kind that hums low in your chest, steady, real. The next morning, my neighbor, Mrs. Harris, knocked on my door. She'd heard the commotion. "Everything all right, Maria?" she asked. "I think so," I said with a tired smile. "I think it finally is." We sat for a while at my kitchen table drinking tea. 2 women who'd both raised kids alone, both learned the hard way that love without limits turns into a leash. "He'll come around," she said softly. "Maybe," I said. "But even if he doesn't, I've finally come around to myself." That afternoon, I walked to the park. The air was sharp and clear, the kind that stings your nose and wakes you up. I sat on a bench and watched the children play, their laughter rising like tiny fireworks against the gray sky. Somewhere, deep down, I hoped my grandkids were laughing too wherever they were, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like a loser. I felt like a survivor. But peace has a way of attracting storms, and mine was coming in the form of a stranger who knew more about my son's secrets than I ever did. It happened on a gray Tuesday, one of those cold, quiet mornings when the world feels paused. I was sitting by the window with my second cup of coffee, watching a group of kids walk to school through the fog, when someone knocked at my door. It wasn't the desperate kind of knock like Jordan's had been. This one was calm, measured, professional. When I opened the door, a woman stood there, tall, mid-60s maybe, dressed neatly in a gray coat and gloves. She had kind eyes, but they carried the weight of someone who'd seen too much. "Maria Dawson?" she asked. "Yes," I said cautiously. "My name's Evelyn. I live on Maple Street, or I used to, next door to your son and daughter-in-law." I stiffened. "You knew Jordan and Amber?" She nodded. "I did, and I think we need to talk." I let her in mostly because something in her voice told me this wasn't gossip. It was truth. We sat at my small kitchen table. She took off her gloves, folded them neatly, and placed a manila envelope between us. "I debated for days whether to come here," she said quietly, "but after what I've seen, I couldn't stay silent. I didn't know what to say, so I stayed quiet." She took a slow breath. "I've been your son's neighbor for years. When he and Amber first moved in, they seemed perfect, polite, successful, the kind of couple everyone in the neighborhood admired. But over time, I started to see cracks." Her eyes flicked to the envelope. "They fought. A lot. Usually about money. I tried to ignore it, but the walls are thin. I heard enough to know your name came up often. Too often." "My name?" "Yes. Every time bills were mentioned. Every time something went wrong. Your son would say, 'Mom will cover it.' It was like a phrase and answer to every problem. When Amber overspent, when the car needed repairs, when the mortgage was short, it always ended with your name. The words sank deep. I felt them settle like stones in my stomach. Evelyn slid the envelope toward me. "This is from the bank. I had a contact there. I used to work with them before I retired. I shouldn't have it, but I thought you deserved to see." Inside were printed statements, transaction histories, account copies, documents with my name in bold. Every month, transfers from Maria Dawson to Jordan and Amber Cole. Every line was proof of what I'd suspected but never wanted to face. And then, at the bottom, I saw something that made my hands tremble: authorization forms with my signature. Only, they weren't mine. "What is this?" I whispered. Evelyn's voice softened. "They used your bank authorization to access your statements to see exactly how much you had at any given time. Every withdrawal, every deposit. They used it to plan how much to ask for without draining you completely. Just enough to keep you hooked." It felt like the air had been sucked from the room. For years, I thought I was a fool blinded by love. But this wasn't just love. This was manipulation, strategy, a system. Evelyn reached across the table, her hand warm against mine. "I know how it feels. My son did the same thing to me years ago. That's why I recognized the signs." My eyes burned, but no tears came. I was past crying. What replaced it was something colder, sharper, a clarity that could cut glass. I thanked her quietly. She nodded, stood, and left, leaving the envelope behind. I sat there for a long time, staring at those papers, at the proof that my son hadn't just taken advantage of my love, he'd planned it. I whispered to myself, he didn't just use me, he studied me, and for the first time, I felt something I hadn't in years: not guilt, not heartbreak, but power. Because if my son thought I was done fighting, he was about to learn even the quietest woman can roar when the truth finally sets her free. I didn't sleep that night. The papers from Evelyn's envelope were spread across my table like pieces of a life I didn't recognize, my name printed in places I never signed, my money scattered across accounts I never approved. I sat there with a pen in my hand, tracing my so-called signature, over and over, realizing how neat it looked. Too neat. Too perfect. Amber always had neat handwriting. By morning, the fog in my head had cleared, replaced by a quiet kind of fury, not wild or loud, but precise, like a blade sharpened overnight. I called the number printed on one of the statements, the local branch of Western Trust Bank. The woman on the other end had that rehearsed politeness that comes from years of talking to people who are angry. "I just have a few questions about my account," I said. "Of course, Mrs. Dawson. Can I ask the reason for your inquiry?" I believe my information was accessed without permission. There was a pause. A shift in tone. "Would you like to schedule an appointment to review your file in person?" "Yes," I said. "Today, by noon?" I was sitting across from a man named Mr. Carter, a middle-aged banker with glasses and a calm, serious voice. He greeted me with a firm handshake and a kind smile that didn't feel fake. "Mrs. Dawson," he said, "I looked into your file before you arrived. There are irregularities." He slid a folder across the table, the same kind Evelyn had shown me. "But this one was official. When your son applied for his mortgage 5 years ago, you signed as co-signer. Along with that, there were authorizations allowing him access to certain financial details for income verification." He looked up at me. "Those authorizations were never revoked. So you're saying he's been looking at my accounts all this time?" He nodded. "Every month, sometimes weekly. It seems he used that access to monitor your balances, likely to gauge how much he could request from you." It was strange hearing it out loud, the thing I had quietly feared for years but never dared to name. I'd always thought I was being generous. Now I realized I'd been managed like an account.mr. Carter continued. "There's more. Some of the transfers you made, the $8,000, for example, were recorded as car payments. But our records show the car was purchased outright before that transfer occurred." My throat went dry. "Then where did my money go?" He hesitated, then answered softly. "Personal spending, luxury items, hotels, high-end purchases, none of it tied to a vehicle." It hit me all at once: the designer bags Amber flaunted on social media, the trips, the clothes, the dinners, all of it, paid with the money I'd sent, believing I was helping a family build a future.mr. Carter folded his hands. "Mrs. Dawson, I don't usually say this, but I think you've been the victim of financial abuse. What your son and his wife did, it's serious." That word abuse felt heavy, foreign, but it fit. "What can I do?" I asked quietly. He met my eyes. "You have rights. You can file a fraud claim, remove your name from the mortgage, and protect your credit. It will take time, but it's possible." For the first time in a long time, the path ahead didn't scare me. It made me feel alive. "I want to do it," I said. "I want my name off that house. I want this to end." Mr. Carter nodded slowly. "Then we'll start today." When I walked out of the bank, the winter sun was low and cold, but I felt taller, the kind of tall that comes from standing up straight after years of being bent by guilt. I wasn't just someone's mother anymore. I was my own person again. But as the paperwork began and the walls of their world started closing in, Jordan found out what I'd done, and his reaction would turn the calm I'd built into a storm I never saw coming. It didn't take long for him to find out. Mr. Carter had warned me gently that once the legal notice was filed, my son would be notified. I remember nodding calmly in his office, pretending I was ready. But nothing really prepares you for the moment your own child learns you've stopped being their safety net. The notice went out on a Thursday. By Friday afternoon, my phone was ringing non-stop. Unknown numbers, private calls, and then finally his name. Jordan. I didn't answer. 5 minutes later, there was a bang on my door. Not a knock, a bang. The kind that rattles the hinges and echoes down the hall. "Mom." His voice was sharp, trembling with fury. "Open up." I stayed seated on the couch, staring at the clock on the wall. 3:42 p.m. I'd remember that time forever. "Mom? I know you can hear me." Another hit on the door. "You filed something with the bank. What the hell is wrong with you?" His voice, once the sweet tone that used to call me mama when he needed comfort, had turned venomous. "You're ruining me," he yelled. "You're destroying your own family." I stood, walked to the door, but didn't open it. I spoke through the wood, calm and steady. "I'm protecting myself, Jordan." There was a beat of silence, then laughter. Harsh, bitter, disbelieving. "Protecting yourself? From me? I'm your son, Mom. You're supposed to protect me." "I did," I said quietly, "for 34 years. And you took everything I had. It's over." He hit the door again, one hard thud. "You're insane. You've lost it. Everyone's going to know what you did to your own blood. You'll be the one who looks bad, not me." That line, that was when I realized he still didn't understand. He still thought life was about appearances, about image, about control. I turned and walked back to my couch. He kept shouting, each word sharper than the last. But they didn't pierce anymore. They just bounced off walls that had finally stopped crumbling. Then his tone shifted, softer now. Desperate. "Mom, please, don't do this. We can fix it. I just need more time. I'll pay everything back, I swear." It was almost convincing, almost. But I'd heard that tone before. The rehearsed tremble in his voice, the half-apology wrapped in promises that never came true. "No," I said simply. He fell silent, the kind of silence that carries the weight of disbelief. Then, quietly, he said, "You'll regret this." Footsteps. The sound of him walking away. Then, the slam of the building door downstairs. I stood there for a long moment, listening to the quiet return, my heart beating steady but heavy. My hands shook a little, not from fear, but from the finality of it all. That night, I sat by my window again, the city glowing below me. I thought about the boy I used to hold in my arms, the one who once cried because he broke his toy truck. I thought about the man he'd become, someone who'd learned how to break people instead. And then I thought about me, the woman who had finally stopped letting herself be broken. When I closed my eyes, I whispered to the darkness, "You can't regret saving yourself." 2 days later, I received an email from Mr. Carter. Subject: Case update. He wrote, "The court has accepted our fraud petition. The investigation is moving forward. You've officially been removed from financial responsibility on the Maple Drive property." I exhaled long, slow, steady. For the first time in years, my name was mine again. But peace never stays long when someone feels you've taken away their control. The next night, I came home to find something waiting at my door. A single envelope. No name. No return address. Inside was a photograph of me sitting at my kitchen table, taken through my window. That's when I realized my son wasn't just angry anymore. He was watching me. At first, I told myself it had to be a mistake. Maybe the photo had fallen out of some misplaced envelope. Maybe it wasn't even taken from my window. But the longer I looked, the less I could lie to myself. The picture showed me exactly as I'd been the night before, sitting at my kitchen table, a book open, a cup of tea beside me, the blinds half drawn, the glow of my lamp spilling onto the snow outside. Whoever took it had been close. For a long minute, I couldn't move. Every small sound, the hum of the refrigerator, the tick of the clock sounded like footsteps. I locked the door, checked every window, and turned off the lights. Then I stood in the dark with my heart hammering against my ribs, whispering to no one. He wouldn't. He couldn't. But I wasn't sure anymore. The next morning, I carried that photo straight to the police station. The officer on duty, a young man who looked barely old enough to shave, studied the picture, then frowned. "Do you know who might have taken this?" "My son," I said, my voice steady but quiet. He raised an eyebrow. "Any proof?" "Just the last 10 years of my life," he sighed. "Ma'am, unless there's a direct threat, there's not much we can do. But I'll file a report." A report. That word sounded like a bandage on a bullet wound. When I left the station, the wind was bitter, sharp enough to sting my cheeks. I walked fast, clutching my coat closed, scanning every parked car, every passing face. And that's when I saw a dark sedan idling at the corner across from my building. Tinted windows, engine running. I stopped, heart in my throat. The driver didn't move. The car just sat there, silent, waiting. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe paranoia had finally found me. Still, I went inside, locked the door again, and called Mr. Carter. He answered on the second ring. "Maria, what's wrong?" "I think someone's watching me," I said. "I found a photo." His voice turned serious. "Do you feel unsafe right now?" "Yes, but I'm not sure if it's real or if it's just me. Real or not. You're not alone," he said firmly. "I'll have a colleague deliver copies of all case files to your address tomorrow. Keep everything documented, and if anything happens, call me before you call the bank. Understood?" For the rest of the day, I moved through my apartment like a stranger in my own home, checking windows twice, keeping the lights low. Fear has a smell. It's metallic, like pennies and cold air. That smell was everywhere. Late that night, I sat by the window again, my old lamp flickering. Snow had started falling thick, heavy flakes blurring the street below. The same corner where the sedan had been now stood empty, just a pile of gray slush where its tires had been. For the first time since morning, I exhaled. Maybe the car really had been nothing. Maybe the photo was meant to scare me. And if it was, it almost worked. But fear and I have an old relationship. I've lived with it longer than anyone else in my life. And once you learn to stop feeding it, it shrinks. So I made a decision right there, staring out into the snow. If my son thought fear would bring me back under his control, he'd forgotten who taught him how to survive in the first place. I turned on the porch light bright, defiant, and left it burning all night. Let whoever was out there see that I wasn't hiding anymore. The next morning, I would learn the car wasn't the only thing watching me, and the truth waiting behind that discovery would change everything. The next morning started like any other. The same gray sky, the same bitter chills slipping through the windows. I almost convinced myself the night before had been nothing more than nerves. Then the knock came. 3 soft taps, not loud, not angry, but deliberate. When I opened the door, a man stood there, late 30s, clean-shaven, wearing a dark jacket with a badge clipped to his belt. His expression was polite, but his eyes were sharp, the kind of sharp that misses nothing. "Mrs. Dawson?" "Yes. I'm Detective Harlan, Denver Police Department. Mind if I come in for a moment?" My stomach tightened. "What's this about?" He glanced down the hall, then back at me. "We just want to clear up a few things. It's about your son." Those 4 words were enough to make my knees weaken. I stepped aside and let him in. He didn't sit. He walked slowly around the small living room, scanning everything, the papers stacked neatly on the table, the untouched mug of coffee, the envelope still sitting near the window. "I understand you filed a report yesterday," he said. "I did. Someone's been watching me." He nodded. "We're aware. That's part of why I'm here." He reached into his jacket and pulled out another photograph, this one sealed in a plastic evidence sleeve. It was the same picture I'd found, except taken from a different angle. My blood ran cold. "Where did you get that?" "From your son's car," he said quietly. I stared at him. "So it was him?" He hesitated, then answered. "Yes and no, he wasn't alone. We believe he hired someone to keep tabs on you, probably to see what steps you were taking legally." I gripped the back of a chair to steady myself. "Why would he do that?" Harlan's eyes softened. "Because you took away his leverage. And people like your son, ma'am, they don't handle losing control very well." I sank into the chair, hands trembling. "Is he in trouble?" "Not yet," the detective said. "But if he crosses the line again, he will be." He gave me his card. "If anything strange happens, calls, letters, people following you, contact me directly. Don't wait." After he left, I sat for a long time staring at that card. It felt surreal, like my life had turned into something I'd once only seen in other people's stories. I used to be a mother, a worker, a quiet woman trying to make ends meet. Now I was a witness in my own survival. That afternoon, the world outside looked softer. The snow had stopped, and sunlight filtered weakly through the clouds. For the first time in days, I took a walk just a few blocks. Nothing far, The air was cold but clean. Every step felt like proof I was still here, still standing, still unbroken. When I came back home, there was a voicemail waiting, Jordan's voice low, strained, trembling. "Mom, I didn't mean for any of this to happen. They're saying I could lose everything. The job, the house, my credit. Amber left for good this time. I'm scared." There was a pause. Then he whispered, "Please don't hate me." I stood there listening, every emotion in me pulling in a different direction: love, anger, grief, pity. He was still my son, but he wasn't the boy I raised anymore, and I finally understood. I couldn't save him from the life he built with his own choices. That night, I locked every window, double-checked every latch, and set the detective's card beside my phone. For the first time, I wasn't afraid. I was ready, because when the truth finally steps into the light, it doesn't just expose others, it frees you too. But the truth has a price, and I was about to learn mine when someone showed up at my door carrying the one thing I thought I'd lost forever. For 3 days after the detective's visit, everything was still. No calls, no cars parked outside, just winter breathing quietly against the windows. I tried to let myself believe it was over. I made soup, did laundry, even played an old record I hadn't listened to in years. Normal things, simple things. But peace never stays long when your life has been living in someone else's shadow. It was Saturday afternoon when it happened. Another knock, gentle this time, almost apologetic. When I opened the door, a woman stood there holding a small cardboard box wrapped in brown paper. She looked maybe 30, wearing a heavy coat and nervous eyes. "Are you Maria Dawson?" "Yes." "I'm sorry to bother you," she said. "My name's Lily. I used to work with your son." Her voice wavered. She held the box a little tighter, as if it might fall apart if she loosened her grip. "Can I come in? Please, it's important." Something about the way she said please made me step aside. She sat at my kitchen table, the same table where everything in my life seemed to begin or end, and set the box between us. "I don't know what's been going on," she started, "but Jordan asked me to keep this for him months ago. He told me if anything ever happened, I should bring it to you." I felt my heart stumble. "What's in it?" "I didn't look," she said quickly, "but when I saw his name in the news this morning about the investigation, I thought maybe you should have it." The news? I hadn't turned on the TV all week. I didn't need to ask what they'd said. I could see it in her eyes. She pushed a box toward me. "I'm sorry. I just thought it was right." Then she left as quietly as she'd arrived. I sat staring at the box. My hands hovered over the tape, shaking. I wasn't sure if I wanted answers anymore. Sometimes truth doesn't heal. It just changes the shape of the wound. But curiosity is its own kind of gravity. Inside was a folder, a few photographs, and a letter in Jordan's handwriting. "Mom," it began, "if you're reading this, it means I finally ruined everything. I never wanted to hurt you. I just wanted to be someone you could be proud of. Every time I borrowed money, I told myself I'd pay it back. But the truth is, I kept digging deeper to hide how bad things really were. Amber pushed, and I let her. I thought if I could keep the image alive, the house, the car, the job, maybe you'd think I'd made it." The next lines blurred as my eyes filled. "You were right to walk away. You were the only one who ever did the hard thing. I don't deserve forgiveness. But if there's anything left of the boy you raised, know that he loved you even when he didn't know how to show it." At the bottom, a single sentence. "There's something in the envelope marked January. It belongs to you." I opened it with trembling fingers. Inside was a check, the exact amount I'd given him for that first emergency 5 years ago. For a long moment, all I could do was stare. It wasn't about the money. It was about what it meant. Somewhere inside the mess he'd made, there was still a flicker of the son I'd loved. I folded the letter, placed it back inside the box, and whispered into the quiet, "Maybe this is where healing starts." The sun was setting through the frosted glass, painting the walls gold. For the first time, the light didn't hurt my eyes. But peace is never simple, because that night, another call came from Detective Harlan, and his voice carried words that would turn that fragile hope into fear all over again. I had just finished washing the dinner dishes when the phone rang. The kitchen was quiet except for the drip of water in the sink and the hum of the heater. For a second, I almost didn't answer. Numbers that late usually mean bad news. But something in me knew. "Mrs. Dawson?" The voice was low, steady. "Detective Harlan." "Yes. I'm sorry to call at this hour, ma'am, but something's happened. We need to talk in person." My stomach tightened. "Is it Jordan?" A pause. "Yes. He's been taken into custody." I gripped the counter. "For what?" "There's evidence he accessed private bank files under your name, documents from several accounts. We believe he may have tried to move money again, this time through a different identity." I closed my eyes. So it never really stopped. Harlan's voice softened. He says he only did it to repay you, that he was trying to fix everything. We'll need you to come down tomorrow to make a statement. After he hung up, the house felt too quiet, the kind of quiet that presses against your chest. I walked into the living room, sat on the couch, and looked at the box Lily had brought. It still sat on the coffee table, sealed again, harmless in the lamplight. I wanted to believe that letter had been the ending. But life rarely ends neatly. That night, sleep wouldn't come. My mind kept replaying every version of Jordan I'd ever known, the laughing little boy chasing fireflies behind our old apartment, the teenager who swore he'd make life better for both of us, the man who learned how to smile while he lied. By dawn, I was dressed and waiting at the station. Harlan met me in the hallway with 2 cups of coffee. He handed me one. "You didn't have to come this early. I couldn't stay home." He nodded. "I get it." In a small interview room, I gave my statement, dates, transfers, everything I remembered. He listened, taking notes, never interrupting. When I finished, he closed his notebook and leaned forward. "There's something you should know," he said quietly. "Your son turned himself in. He walked through our doors at 2 this morning." My breath caught. "He what?" He said he was done running. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. I just stared at the gray tabletop between us, feeling a strange mix of relief and heartbreak. "Can I see him?" I asked finally. Harlan hesitated. "He's being processed." But yes, briefly. They led me down a corridor lined with flickering lights. When I saw him behind the glass, my heart broke all over again. He looked small, tired, unshaven, his shoulders slumped like a man who'd finally realized the cost of pretending. He picked up the phone. "So did I." "Mom," he said, voice hoarse. "I'm sorry." I nodded, tears burning but refusing to fall. "I know. They said you found the letter." "I did." He swallowed hard. "It wasn't enough." "No," I said softly, "but it was something." For a few minutes, we just sat there, no words left. Then the guard tapped his watch. Time. As I stood, Jordan pressed his hand to the glass. I hesitated, then placed mine against it, one last fragile bridge between us. "I'll be better," he whispered. "I hope so," I said. "For you." Outside, the snow had started again, light as dust. I walked to my car with the detective's card in one pocket and my son's letter in the other. Between them was the space where forgiveness might someday grow. But as I started the engine, my phone buzzed with a new message from a number I didn't recognize, containing just 4 words that froze me in place. "He's not alone anymore." The message glowed on the screen like it was lit from the inside. "He's not alone anymore." I read it once, twice, a third time. No name, no context, just those 4 words and an unknown number. At first, I thought it was spam. Then my chest tightened, because there was only one he that mattered. I called the number back. Straight to voicemail, no greeting, no name. Just silence. I stared at the phone until the screen dimmed, the light fading from my reflection, the drive home blurred by in pieces, red lights, white snow, gray sky. When I reached my apartment, I double-locked the door and sat by the window again. Phone still in my hand, pulse racing in my ears. Whoever sent that text knew enough to scare me. A few hours later, my phone buzzed again, this time a call. "Detective Harlan, Mrs. Dawson. I just wanted to let you know we've moved your son into a holding unit downtown," he said. "He's safe?" "For now." "Yes." "Why?" I told him about the message. He went quiet for a beat. "You didn't respond, did you?" "No good. If you get anything else, screenshot it and send it to me. We'll trace it." When he hung up, the apartment felt colder than usual. The shadows from the streetlight stretched long across the floor like reaching fingers. I tried to distract myself, washed the dishes, folded laundry, made tea, but the words wouldn't leave me alone. "He's not alone anymore." By evening, exhaustion won. I dozed on the couch, phone clutched in my hand. A sound woke me around midnight, soft footsteps outside my door. Then a whisper, a woman's voice. "Maria." I froze. For a moment I thought I was dreaming, but then she said it again. Louder this time. "Maria, it's Lily." I opened the door a few inches. She stood there, coat half zipped, face pale from the cold. "I didn't know where else to go," she said quickly. "The police called me this afternoon. They asked about Jordan's case. But there's something they don't know." I stepped aside. "Come in." She pulled an envelope from her bag and handed it to me. Inside were several printed emails, messages between Jordan and another name I didn't recognize. "They were planning something," she said quietly. "A few weeks ago, before he turned himself in. He told this person he'd take the blame if it kept her safe." I frowned. "Her who?" Lily hesitated. "Amber. Of course." I skimmed the email's coded language about moving funds, covering tracks, protecting the family name. Every message ended the same way. We're in this together. That's when it hit me. The message on my phone wasn't a threat. It was a warning. He's not alone anymore didn't mean Jordan had company in a cell. It meant Amber was still out there and she wasn't finished. I looked up at Lily. When did you get these? Yesterday. I didn't want to believe it. But someone's been following me too. Her voice cracked. There was a car outside my apartment last night. Same dark sedan you mentioned. I felt the air go heavy between us. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The city outside was silent, wrapped in snow, like the world itself was holding its breath. Finally, I said, "Then we tell the detective everything. Tonight." She nodded, eyes wide, frightened but firm. We sat together at the table, writing down every detail we could remember. The same table where this whole story had started with papers, signatures, and trust, only this time, I wasn't signing my name away. I was taking it back. But before we could send the evidence, the power went out, plunging the apartment into darkness, and a single beam of light flickered through the window, aimed straight at us. The flashlight beam cut through the window, slicing across the living room wall. For a second, I couldn't move. My breath caught in my throat, my heart beating like it wanted to escape. Beside me, Lily froze too, her eyes wide in the darkness. "Don't move," I whispered. We waited. 1 second. 2. 3. Then the light disappeared just like that, swallowed by the night. I reached for my phone, but before I could dial, it buzzed. "Detective Harlan." "Mrs. Dawson," he said, voice tense. "Stay inside. We've had a sighting near your street. Officers are on their way." The next half hour stretched like forever. Sirens wailed somewhere far off. The sound of tires on snow. Radios crackling outside. When it was finally over, Harlan himself came to the door. His face was serious but calm. "It's handled," he said. "We caught someone near the lot across the street." My stomach twisted. "Who?" He hesitated. "Amber." I felt the world tilt slightly. Like the floor shifted under me, apparently. She'd been hiding for weeks, bouncing between motels, running out of options. The moment she learned Jordan had turned himself in, she'd panicked. Came looking for me. Maybe to plead. Maybe to scare me. Maybe both. They found her camera, her laptop, and copies of documents she'd stolen. But the strangest thing was the note in her car. Just one sentence written in neat handwriting. He was supposed to fix it. That night, when the police left, I stood alone at my window again. The same place where this whole story began, me staring out at a world that kept moving while mine stood still. Only now, I wasn't the same woman. The fear that used to crawl under my skin had turned into something steadier. Not anger, not revenge. Peace. Real peace isn't loud. It doesn't arrive with grand gestures or perfect closure. It comes quietly, like dawn after a long night, soft, slow, inevitable. A few weeks later, I got a letter in the mail. No return address. Just my name written in a handwriting I knew too well. "Mom," it said, "I'm serving my time. It's not long, but it's enough to make me think. The lawyer said you dropped some of the charges. I don't know why. But thank you. Maybe you're still protecting me in your own way. I hope someday I can protect you too." I read that line over and over, and for the first time, I smiled. Not because everything was fixed, it wasn't, but because somewhere inside all that damage, there was still a small piece of the boy I raised. Life didn't magically get easier after that. Bills still came. The apartment was still quiet. But it was my quiet. My bills. My life. And that was enough. Sometimes the hardest love in the world is the one that chooses to let go. The love that says, "I'll always care, but I won't always save you." The love that stops running into burning houses that someone else keeps setting on fire. I used to think being a mother meant giving everything until there was nothing left. Now I know it also means knowing when to stop, because there comes a moment in every woman's life when she has to decide, will I keep breaking myself to hold together someone else's pieces, or will I finally walk away and begin again? And for the first time, I chose me. This story isn't about revenge. It's about reclaiming peace. About remembering that even the softest heart can learn to stand on its own. If you've ever been used, ignored, or made to feel small, remember this. You are not selfish for saying no. You are not cruel for setting boundaries. You are not weak for walking away. Sometimes strength doesn't roar. Sometimes it whispers, "I'm done."